No! 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 No!
If you are not triggered by this PC build, there's probably something wrong with you, because if you know a little bit about PC parts, I basically used a lot of parts that, you know, you've heard some people say don't use it. But believe it or not, a lot of these things are actually lies that you believe in. You believe that, oh, you can't use this one because that's bad, or this is bad.
Monstrous lie.
Actually, the truth is a little bit more simpler. Now, if during the build process you are not triggered, then I'm gonna be impressed. But if you're thinking, what the heck's going on? Why am I supposed to be triggered? This is a good example of how to get around these things that you maybe have heard online. Don't use this or don't use that because it's bad for you, or this is bad PC. I'm actually gonna explain a lot of mistakes that people are making when building themselves a creator PC. So let's build this thing. Licensing Windows is cheap and easy with whokeys.com, and if you use the code TN20, you get an extra discount. Complete the purchase, copy the key, and paste it to the activation settings. And you're all done. Also check out their Microsoft Office 19 license and use the same code TN20 for the extra discount. Check out whokeys.com in the video description below. If you know about this case, then this case got a little bit bad reviews from Gamers Nexus. I'm gonna judge for myself if it's gonna be good or not, because I really like the minimalistic and very nice panorama view of the case, and I've got something that kind of fits in there. You've got a really nice handle over here, really nice design. Okay, it's just magnetic. I had no issues with mine. I think Gamers Nexus just got a weird, odd model. Okay, so it's a hinge. You just pull it towards the back, and now the aluminium chassis comes off. Then on the top over here, if we just lift this up, we can get rid of this top panel as well. This over here is the power button. So here we have another little hinge bit. Obviously you can put radiators in here for extra airflow in, because obviously our front panel is just glass. That means that we're gonna have to take this off. It just basically slides off. Into here, you can also put 3 2.5-inch drives. So if I'm opening this up, it's on a hinge. You can put some hard drives in there. I can see 2 USB 3.0 headers, not 1. That's why you have 4 USBs in the front. There's a little screw, and this is to actually undo the power supply shroud on the other side. Okay. I took this off as well, so it's easier to build in here. You can actually pull this glass off as well. There we go. Because these hinges, they just clip onto there and then voila. Look at the building space inside here now. I believe the motherboard shroud can come off. You see these screws in there? Okay. That's loose now in there. Once you've undone these two, there's 2 more screws in here that you need to do as well. The nice thing is there's a nice accessories box included, so I can easily put these screws where they're supposed to go. Now the motherboard tray comes off. Now if you wanted to, you could do the same with the power supply. Take that one off, but I'll leave it on, it's probably easier. Oh, the bottom comes off as well, so I can easily mount my radiators or fans on the bottom there for some airflow up, and there's a dust card on the bottom there. But now then, it's time for the motherboard. And I am using the Asus Z790 Creator Pro at Wi-Fi. And you might be already triggered because you maybe have heard some people's experience with Asus motherboards. My experience, do you remember that video? And I'm gonna do it anyway. Well, the thing is, I have been actually in contact with ASUS behind the scene, trying to fix certain things. They've told me a lot of things that they've implemented and changed, but I'm still waiting for their headquarters actual official statement so that I can share it with you. Now, here's the thing with this ASUS motherboards. They're very unique because I believe they're only ones that actually offer creative features or have designed it around the creators, not gamer motherboards. So if you want a creative motherboard with some of these features in here, then this is kind of your only choice. So we have 4 M.2 SSDs with Gen 4 storage. You've got DDR5 support up to 192 gigabytes, really fast USB-C front panel port with quick charge as well. That's why you have this extra pin. You've got 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports and 10 gigabit Ethernet, which is all what we need for this build. Because if you haven't got it yet, this ain't gonna be gaming PC. It's gonna be a great PC. Now we can already slot the motherboard where it's supposed to go. The interesting thing is this tray has no nubbins, so your motherboard won't fully line up. You just have to screw it in. I wish there was one nubbin standoff, which is usually this there, but not this time. Now we can go back in here and screw it in. It's often the weird case that sometimes motherboard manufacturers use like wide threads and sometimes these skinny threads for the motherboard ones, and then you have different ones for the rest of the case. I never get that. So these seem to be the same as you would have on your power supply. By the way, that screwdriver that came with one of those Noctua coolers is one of the best screwdrivers you can have for PC building. Next, the CPU. This is probably the most triggering part, what you're thinking. You're thinking, why are you getting this degrading piece of Remember the news where Intel had some issues with this one? Firstly, the issue is now fixed. According to Intel, this was just some microboard something somewhere that was requesting wrong voltage, but now it is fixed. Once you run the latest BIOS, you shouldn't have any problems with it, and if you have Intel extended the warranty anyway. Now, since I've done the Core Ultra 200S review, the 14th gen is actually slightly better in some of these things than the Core Ultra, which means that you can get better performance with this one rather than the new generation. And if you want to build yourself the best bang for buck creator PC, then there's some build guides in the video description below on every single video. Just pick the one that's closest to your budget. Whatever your budget is, you can build something for you. Even for $1,000, you can get an insane PC that has upgrade paths and everything. Go with that. As you can see, this is completely new CPU. Whoa, 14900K. Here it is. Bin. You might not know, but this Intel CPU inside that socket is actually not a really good idea because that socket's gonna bend it eventually. And what you have to do is buy this extra bracket. There's some from Thermal Grizzly or Thermal Ride. Thermal Grizzly has now some light versions as well, which actually just help your CPU from not bending. I'll explain how this works if you don't know that yet. So when you put your CPU in the socket, make sure that your arrow will match up. Now I'm going to take this plastic cover off so it's easier to see. You see that there's these 2 sides in there, and when you press down on there, these 2 sides will push down in the middle of the CPU, and there's quite a lot of force that will keep this CPU going down there. And that can bend the CPU because you're putting a lot of pressure on this rectangular CPU. And if you put pressure on a rectangular CPU, it'll just start to bend a little bit in the middle. And to prevent that, we're gonna install this bracket, which is super simple. Undo these 4 in there. Okay. Now the bad thing is the back is actually gonna fall down now because I haven't got this on a table or bracket because there's a bit of gap underneath there, but we're gonna do it anyway. Okay, this part you don't need anymore, but the back of this where you screw it in, as you can see now, has come off. What I need to do now is kind of hold it on the back there, line the screw holes up on the back of the motherboard, and then you just slide this on the top there, and then screw it in. I don't want to screw like one side in more than the other or something like that. I want this to be very equally pressing down onto the CPU because then I'm making even pressure all throughout. This bracket will just press down all around the CPU evenly, and we're not bending our CPU anymore. That's not just about the CPU bending, but also about the temperatures of the CPU. Because when it bends down like that, the cooler will make less contact with your CPU, meaning your CPU temperature is going to go higher up, which means your clock speeds are going to go down, which means you're going to lose performance. So that will make it cooler and faster, and it's extra $10. The downside is that Intel should have fixed it in the first place, but now when you're triggered, I've fixed the triggering. Now next, let's do the M.2 SSD. For that, I'm actually using something very new, newest and latest. It is a hybrid SSD, and it's called Samsung 990 Evo Plus. If you haven't seen the review on the channel, go check it out. But for operating system, this is one of the best drives that I have tested out there. This one is 2 terabytes, and because it has chips only on the top side, we'll do these little standoff stickers. You take one of these tiny little squares and then you put it onto there. If you have the chips on your M.2 on both sides, you don't need this, but that makes sure that it's not going to be bending as much. Okay. M.2 SSD installed. Let's take the heatsink off. Now, what's different about this is it's a hybrid. So this can run PCIe Gen 5 2 lanes or PCIe Gen 4 4 lanes, and it can go over 7,000 megabytes per second. It doesn't have DRAM, uses host memory buffer, so your DRAM cache. But for operating system running programs, it's still going to be one of the best Gen 4 drives you can get. Next, we have RAM. And you might be triggered again because we're using this Clev Crass 6400 megatransfers per second kit, and this is 64 gigabytes. Now, because it's a great PC, we need a lot of RAM. 32 gigabytes is definitely not enough. Even 64 gigabytes really isn't ideal because we can see over 90 and sometimes 100 gigabytes used. But this is super fast. And if you've seen some of my reviews before, you've seen that I'm saying that for the 14th gen, you should actually be using 5600 megatransfers per second, because that's the official 2-stick kind of bandwidth. But the thing is, the 14th gen has very good memory controller, and I have good expectation that we're gonna get this working with that at no problem. Even though said that you shouldn't actually do this, if I have any issues, I can actually turn down the clock speed of the RAM, just make it run 56, 5000 or something like that. But you'll see in a minute, we'll get it running, I believe it. If you want to check them out, I'll leave the link in the description below. Next, we're gonna install our cooler bracket onto this, which is gonna be very special. You'll see that in a minute. Okay, TRYX, you have made a weird mistake. This is their own back bracket for the cooler, but look, it doesn't go on because this cutout is not lining up. So I'll have to install the cooler bracket before I put the motherboard in, which means the motherboard's gonna have to come out. Okay, I'll leave one of the screws in. Okay, and then I'll just put these standoffs on this side as well, so it can't fall out anymore. So we'll do it this way, so you can see it the best, but now all we have to do is lift the motherboard tray onto there and just slide it in. Oh, that was easy. The screw holes lined up better than I thought. Now, before I do actually put this back, there's a few different possibilities how you can actually install this, because you can move this power supply from the top all the way to the bottom and then move the motherboard further up all the way to the top in here. It's whether you want the exhaust from the top or the intake from the bottom, and I think I would prefer the intake from the bottom in this case. Or do I want the exhaust out of the top when we put the AIO in there? That's probably a little bit better than putting the AIO on the side. Do you know what? I think I've changed my mind. We're gonna move this power supply further down. Inside the PC case, there is this little panel metal plate as well that can go over this power supply if you don't want to showcase your bit in there. But if you've got one of those fancy power supplies that has some kind of, you know, side display or something like that in there. But if you don't, all you have to do is this. So I'm doing some kind of dry fitting in here, and basically the cooler is going to go there. The tubes are going to come out from the bottom, going up there. But that means that our fans are here on the opposite way, because all the cables now are on the front rather than on the back, which means that I'm gonna have to swap all of these fans around and make those fans come out from the back, so I have a nice clean aesthetic in the front there. I'd like these performance fans on my AIO. There are these RGB fans in there that you can put in there as well, but the performance fans are better in terms of airflow, air pressure. Next, the AIO onto the top, which means I'm gonna have to take these smaller screws that came in the AIO box. By the way, I haven't mentioned that this is the Panorama AIO, and maybe this is triggering for you as well. Like going with an AIO and a Panorama, this is quite fancy. It is quite fancy. It's one of the most expensive AIOs that you can get. But if you have seen the cooling performance of this, go check out my video when we overclocked the Ultra 9. 300 plus watts. Absolutely no sweat. So I'm expecting the same with this here, and you need a bit of a cooler to actually cool the 14900K down. Hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, consider subscribing. We are doing content creator PCs on this channel, no gaming. So if you're into that type of thing, subscribe button is your friend. Don't forget to hit that bell icon as well. 2 screws in. So now it should hold itself on the top. Then I can still slide it if I wanted to, forwards and backwards. But now the AIO. What I always like to do with my AIOs, if they haven't got thermal paste installed, is actually give them a nice alcohol bath. Not bath really, a wipe, because I want to get any random residue off there. Maybe you've touched it, maybe you've got some finger grease on it, maybe you've got some other random bits in there, or some things that are left there from manufacturing. I'm gonna make the CPU clean. So just wipe it like that. CPU seems clean, but now I'm sure the cooler is gonna be not clean. Look at that. And then the thermal paste. We're using the Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut, which is one of the best. It already comes with these attachments that you can put on the end. And then all you have to do now is just push in to see that your thermal paste is coming out. And then with that end, you can already spread it. And because we've got the bracket as well, the thermal paste is not going all over the place. If you want to check it out, I'm going to leave the link in the description below. This goes down and droops down. Once the cooler IHS makes contact with the CPU IHS, I am not going to be like removing it because I don't want it to peel off and then go back on. I'm just going to screw it in from 2 sides. Make sure to keep pressure on the top. Now, as you can see, the tubes are a little bit too tight in there. So I'm gonna move this a little bit this way. And good job I only put 2 screws on, because now it's easy to do. This cooler also has a fan on the top that actually cools the VRMs a little bit, so you'll get nice cooling over there. This I'm gonna put into the AIO pump. These go onto the CPU. Anyone remember what happened with Gigabyte power supplies? I bought this with my own money, and I wanted to do this so that you would get triggered. They actually updated their lineup, or the surge protection, or like the protection where it actually should come off and so on. They've got a new model as well. Obviously, this is the UD now, UD 1000 GM. So this is a 1000 watt power supply, and it also has a PCIe 5.0 cable, which is a native PCIe 5.0 600 watts cable that goes directly onto the power supply. They're not exactly the same as the motherboard screws, the power supply screws actually. Oh, that's an interesting one. Look at this. So you've got the one that goes onto the power supply, the one downside about this power supply is nothing's marked, okay? But these are both CPU cables, which means I can have daisy chained cables to the CPU and not have two separate cables running to it, which is a little bit cleaner. That's nice. That's very interesting. You often have 4 screws for your power supply, but what TRYX has done here is you've got 2 nubbins screws that kind of fit on the side of the actual chassis. But then there's 2 more that go on diagonal sides of the power supply screw holes. And then there's 2 nubbins that go on the other diagonals of this. So I can just match up the nubbins, screw this in onto the power supply. This is like the fastest power supply installation I have ever done. 2 diagonals done, and then now onto the chassis. Look at that. That is amazing. That is a really clever idea. Why put 4 onto the chassis where you could put 2 of them onto the power supply, and then everything's just sorted. Now, because everything is pretty much blacked out inside the PC case, I'm actually gonna try to do something very interesting and put these on. So these are some wireless, it's called Lee & Strimer wireless 16 and 8 cable. So basically this can go onto your GPU and it's an LED strip basically. So as you can see, it's basically just an extension of the PCIe cable. The only thing with these is that some GPU manufacturers have the PCIe cable like rotated on the GPU. So let me get my GPU and then see what happens. I'm going to be using this Pilot Jetstream, and this is the 4070 Ti Super, which is basically a baby 4080. And you might be saying, well, why didn't you go with a 4080 then? Or why did you go with something better? Actually, this is a little bit of a secret kind of a GPU for creators, because you still get 16 gigs of VRAM. With the 4070 Ti or 4070 Super, you're not. For Ti Super, you do get 16 gigs of VRAM. And this version is completely blacked out. No RGB, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, this is going to be the issue with this GPU. I'll show you now. Now, usually that GPU sits over there like that, but I'm not even sure if this actually fits onto there. Ah, that is so annoying. Just about doesn't fit. The cool thing is they've put blue on these ends of the cables. So when you plug in, you actually can see if you plug in it all the way in, if you can see the blue or not. And for me, I can see a little bit of the blue, which is not ideal. It doesn't even clip in. Well, actually, I might be able to still install it because this here can come off. Not a lot different, so basically I've just shaved a little bit off on this side. It's as close to the screw as possible, so it would slide in. Now the cool thing is, this RGB is wireless. There's no other cables that come with it. I just have to connect it to the wireless receiver and then do it that way. And then we've got exactly the same thing with our 24-pin that goes on the side over there. Gonna get that going into there. Ooh, that's gonna be nice. Okay, I've got some more stuff. This is wireless LCD from Lee & I've got, these are reverse blade ones, so we can get them exhausting whichever way we want, like going up from the up. This is just wireless. This is normal LCD as well. These are normal ones. I'm gonna use these fans instead of some other ones, okay? I'm gonna keep the performance fan still on the AIO because I want that to come from there. But this is getting interesting. While I figure the fans out, I'm gonna do a first boot. Let's see what happens. Is it? Oh. Oh yeah, baby. This looks amazing. RAM went. VGA. There we go. Look at that. This is very old BIOS. So one of the first things, like I mentioned, to do with that CPU is go getting changed on the BIOS. I'm gonna update all the BIOS, set the Windows up. I'm gonna figure out how to install some of these LCD fans, wireless from Lee & and we're gonna get this proper awesome PC built and finally get it ready. So one of the big things that I actually changed through this is the fans. So these wireless Li & Li fans that I got here, and I've seen a few other people do some builds online with it, they didn't actually work for me. And no matter what I tried, and I tried to talk to my contact who, got me these fans, nothing I could do. I've been waiting long enough. I don't know what was wrong. They just didn't work. They didn't turn up. All of the screens weren't turning up. So I just thought I'm gonna sack these fans and I'm gonna put different ones on. So the ones I used were the ones that I used actually the Lando Norris PC. I'm not sure if you remember seeing that one. That wasn't me. And these TL fans are still working. As you can see, I've got LCDs, 4 LCDs, 1 in the back, 3 on the side, and then 1 just without the LCD on the bottom. Some of them are reversed, some of them are pushing in. So the side fans there are probably the most interesting situation, where the bottom ones are pushing air in, whereas the top one is actually pushing air out. So there's kind of a interesting airflow going on there. So we're actually probably a little bit of a negative air pressure, but the cooling is amazing. I'll show you now. But before that, I want to talk about the build quality, because if you've seen a case review from Gamers Nexus about this case, then you've seen that they said this is a horrendous case, don't buy it. Whereas all the experience I've had about this case is very impressive. The build quality is amazing. I haven't had any issues. It all feels very high quality. All the metal used is not cheap steel, it's aluminium or some other metal. It feels very premium quality. I have absolutely no issues about the case. It looks amazing and really fits in our Interstellar or kind of a spaceship theme. I'm enjoying it a lot. So I don't know what people were talking online. See, sometimes you can't just trust everything online. I don't know. But then let's check out the cooling performance here then. So I've got 4900K. I'm using the Intel Extreme settings on the PC. So there's performance, extreme, and base. So I've got the highest Intel recommended settings. The RAM runs at 6400 megatransfers per second. So far, I've had absolutely no issues, stable as anything. The iGPU, which is very helpful, and our 4070 Ti Super. Multi-core performance, 10 minutes. Let's take a look. Now, if you look at the core temperatures here, then the peak cores here on the top right now are going around 70 degrees. Now, this cooler is so impressive. I know it looks fancy, and I've tested some fancy coolers out before. This one is not just fancy, it performs absolutely amazingly well. So if you want something that's so unique, but you're not gonna be compromising your cooling performance, this is one of the best ones that you can get. I mean, look at that. We're like in the low 70s, maybe low 80s sometimes, pushing to 80, and we're pushing 253 watts from the socket. That's ridiculous. On a 14900K, that's ridiculous. While it's running that benchmark, I want to talk about the GPU mistake that a lot of people are making, if you didn't pick that up already from the video. Now, when you create a video editing PC, which this is for, this is actually going to replace our editor's PC in there, and you might be thinking, well, in a lot of the cases you're downgrading the PC because we're going from 4080 Super to 4070 Ti Super. And the thing is, actually we're going to be going up in performance, because in video editing, especially in Premiere Pro, the CPU performance is a lot more important than GPU performance. The GPU can accelerate certain things, but most of the performance that you feel on your hands and how snappy things are down to the CPU. So we're going from 14700K to 14900K with a lot better cooling. The 14700K there is actually very close in performance, but often actually thermal throttling because the air cooler isn't quite enough when the room gets warm. This guy here is going to be able to maintain the low temperatures of that 14900K at all times. And we're still in the 70s and over 2061 points. So as you can see, having the 14900K is fine, but remember to update the BIOS and don't let it run unlimited power. You could if you wanted to, but make sure you've got the latest BIOS version. For 14900K, this is probably the best cooler that I've seen, or the coolest 14900K I've seen with the 4900K and the CPU cooler combo. So the purpose of this video is to inspire you to build your own creator PC, because you can really customize everything and later upgrade it. You're not stuck with anything. You can reuse the parts. You can use some of the old parts. You can get parts used. If you want to build yourself the best bang for buck creator PC and wondering which parts should I get for best performance for you, then I've got build guides in the video description below, completely free. Just go check them out and build yourself something amazing. If you enjoy any of these parts, the links of these are in the description below. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'll meet you there. Thanks guys for watching. Bye-bye.
Did it work?
I think it might have.